Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Today I'm going to show you how to make this adjustable straight edge jig for your router. And it's great for all sorts of things. You can use it for stop dados, for fluting, for wainscotting, for rabbiting, all sorts of cool things. So stick around and watch how we can make this. This particular jig, I'm sort of making it to use with my little Bosch router. This is a 12 amp. This is a nice little router. Not my biggest router, but it's nice and light and it's handy for this kind of thing. Now, when you look at a router, you'll notice that most routers have one flat edge and the rest of the base is round. And there's a good look at that. Now, I'm going to make my base so that it is going to ride against the round side. And yeah, when you put that against the round side, you can move back and forth. And a lot of people will say, well, why don't you put it against the flat side? And here's the reason I'm not. Because I know from years of experience that when I'm routing, sometimes as I'm moving along, I don't realize that I move the router just a tiny bit. And when you have a flat edge like this, it makes a big difference. When you're routing, you can see the slot or whatever it is, there's a big sort of difference in the cut. Whereas when you put it on this side, even if you do move it back and forth, sometimes there's no difference, and sometimes you can see a very tiny difference. So that's why I'm putting it on this side. The second reason I'm putting it on this side is because there's a lot more area. See all this area here compared to this? There's only, I don't know what there is here, a couple of inches compared to almost 3 inches on the other side. So there's a lot more area on this too. So the first thing I'm going to make is the little stops and starts. And let me show you that. I've already taken a moment to cut the outlines for the stops and starts, and I just cut them to 5 inches by 5 inches. Some people get frustrated trying to make these kinds of curves. These are really simple. I looked for something that I think is going to work. In this case, it was a spray can lid, and this round that I'm using here, if you watched my program on building the base for this workbench, this is the same round that I used on that. So I'm keeping this because it's a handy little rig. Now I've just measured out 1.5 inches. Now watch how this will all come together. So there's 1.5 inches. Draw a line there, and I marked another one over here. And basically the curve that we're going to be looking at, let me move that out of the way. The curve is going to be like this. So here's how easy this is. Now I just take this lid, and all I'm going to do is take the lid up to the corner here and to the top up here and over to the line. And all I'm going to do is draw a line just like that. Nothing fancy. Same thing on this side. Up to the top, over to the line. Now watch this. When I take this in and run this up so that it touches both of those lines on either side, and that's just how easy it is to make something like that. So I'm going to take this. No, I'm going to cut this on the router first of all, then we'll take it to the bandsaw and cut that off. Now, I only have a 1/4 inch bit here, and these are a little bit thicker than that. So rather than try and move the fence, what I'm going to do, I have this very thin piece of plastic. Actually, it's part of an old plastic sign that I got from somewhere, and it's very thin. I got it because it's a very thin plastic. What I'm going to do, the first cut I'm going to make, I'm going to clamp this plastic on, and I'll drop that down, move that across, and then lift it up. The second plunge I'm going to make, I'm going to take the plastic off and do the same thing. And that will allow me to, because there's a difference in the width, it'll make just almost a perfect slot for that bolt to go through. And of course, there's 2 cuts that I need to make. Now, what I need to do, basically all I need to do now is to cut 2 strips, straight strips, and I'm going to cut this part off here, but I'm going to use this for a measurement for right now. So the strip that is going to be sort of the fence, I'm just going to take an arbitrary number, and I like 2 inches, so I'm going to set that at 2 inches. So 2 inches and 4 7/8, and I'll take this over to the table saw, and I'm just going to do that off camera because this isn't anything special. We're just cutting off 2 straight strips. There, this jig is coming together nicely, and there's the 2 strips. So there's the 2 inch and the 4 7/8, and that is eventually going to get glued on there like that. And there's our start and our stop. So what I'm going to need to do, first of all, I'm going to need to measure the middle, and because this is going to be able to move back and forth, I'm going to need to drill some holes. So like a hole here and a hole there, and that way one of the other holes I can use. And so there's going to be a series of holes all the way around, and it looks like they're going to be about 3 inches apart, and that way every part of this I can use just depending on where I put the bolt. So there's the bolts that I'm using for this build, and some of you may recognize these. These are called T-bolts, and these particular ones are used for anchoring your toilet. If you've ever had to change a toilet, a porcelain toilet, these are what's used on the plate underneath, and they're T-nuts because they sort of lock in place. Now in the past, I've been using these, and you can see there's quite a difference in the diameter of them. So I'm trying these for the first time. Now the problem with these is because they're round, to make them T-nuts, you really need to grind them down a lot. Now, what I found with these, even though they're T-nuts, they were a little bit round as well. They were sort of flat on the side, but I took and ground them down just a little bit. You can see where I ground them down a little bit to make them fit a little bit better. Now, what I need to do on the underside of the jig here, I'm going to need to drill some Forstner bit holes and a through hole, and that's what the bolt is going to go through, and that's what will hold it. So when I put that through from the bottom in all those series of holes that I need to drill, that's what locks that in, and you can see it's actually flat that way. It's flush with the bottom, and that will sit on top, and then the part that we just drilled the slots in, they will fit on top, and of course they'll be able to slide back and forth, and then there will be a wing nut that goes on top of it. Now to drill the 2 little recesses for the T-bolts, I don't even have to change the fence because everything is centered. I just had to mark which end, how far I needed to go on each end. So I'm just going to go ahead and do all of these. there's my jig, and you can see that I've got a couple of the bolts already installed in there, and the stop and the start. And the reason those are there is to give me a good accurate setting for this little wooden fence to go on. So I'm just going to put some glue on there right now and spread that around, and then I'm going to use my 18 gauge pinner just to fasten that down. And because my workbench is nice and flat now, I can do all of this right on my workbench and know that it's going to be good and flat. Well, that concludes my video for today. A nice, easy to make, adjustable, straight edge for your router. I'm Colin Canet for WoodWorkWeb. Thanks for watching.